Thank you, everyone, for joining me today for our member spotlight. I have to say that this is a very special one for myself, as I am with Larry Eisenstadt, who, as many of you know, my father was the assistant rabbi here right out of rabbinical school about 47-ish years ago. My father took over as an assistant, and he had the honor and privilege to work with Larry, and I have as well. And so this is a very special interview for me. Larry, how are you doing today?
Just fine.
Very good. Very, very good, right? I'm so excited that you're doing so well today. So we usually start with how long have you been involved in the Temple of Aaron congregation? And I'll also add on another question, which is, in all of your time here, because as I just alluded to, you worked with my father many years ago, what have been some of your favorite memories from working at Temple of Aaron? You can think of some of way, way back when you were just a young father versus just a couple of years ago when you were a young grandfather. So what are some of your favorite memories or programs or things that we have done at the Temple of Aaron?
Well, one of the favorite programs, since I've been a member here actually since 1973, since Linda and I were married here by Rabbi Raskis, and I spent the first 2 years of our married life in the Big Apple, New York. Then we came back here for me to pursue graduate education at the U of M in social work and public administration. Since 1975, I've been an active member and a staff member at T of A in various capacities, and working with Rabbi Mordechai Miller. One of the most there are two vivid memories I have, going way, way back. One was a program which Temple of Aaron ran concerning Israel. The entire synagogue, the entire building was turned into a museum from top to bottom. And it involved Israel, biblical Israel, modern day Israel, and they had a camel and other animals which are very much in Israel. And it went on for about a week and involved the entire community of the Twin Cities. And the fact that people began to learn about Israel as a result of this effort, which was jointly run by Rabbi Miller and Rabbi Raskis, people began to appreciate what Israel was all about. This was obviously a few days, about 2 or 3 years after the Yom Kippur War, and people had a somewhat bad attitude, a negative attitude towards Israel as being the aggressor here. And I think the fact that this was conducted in Temple of Aaron gave people a better perspective of what Medinat Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael was all about. And the other memory I have is not a very somewhat not a very pleasant one. We lost a child. We lost a son. In between our older daughter Sabrina and our younger daughter Gabrielle, we lost a son. And actually, my wife never saw the son because with the child was immediately brought over to the neonatal unit at the University of Minnesota. But I remember very distinctly that Rabbi Miller scooted down River Road, breaking all speed limits, all land speed records, I would assume, to stay with us. To stay with us as the child was basically dying. Staying with my mother-in-law and I and Linda, and offering us comfort as the child slowly died. And that was very much appreciated. And then the next year, Gabrielle was born. So that is a memory I have, which specifically concerned Rabbi Miller, Micah's father, and the fact that he just whatever he was doing, he just dropped out. I just dropped it and came. Just 1 second. Can we stop the recording? Just 1 second. Okay. So that incident, that somewhat sad incident, about the death of our son, who we named. Actually, you don't name a child till after his birth, but we kind of tended to call him Seth. But so that's a memory I have of what was going on in the really early days of our membership. Other things I remember when a man by the name Harry Gottesman, who was the shamus, I guess you would call him, left or suddenly, without warning. I remember the temple, Rabbi Raskas, as a matter of fact, called on me to assume some of the duties and responsibilities, including running services, and that brought me into the kind of position I am right now. And that was way back at the beginning. I remember I was working with Robert Fisher, who was the youth director, a well-known youth director. And so he and I worked together on doing those tasks which Harry Gottesman had done. And then Zichrono Livracha. And other things which was happening in the Temple of Aaron. We've had, as any community does, we've had our faux pas and with people and with leadership, etc., etc. And but those two memories I do remember as if they were yesterday.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing those deep memories. And yeah, I mean, the memory that you shared around my father is extremely meaningful for me, because he's the reason I got into this industry. And his care, his desire to be there for community really highlights and emulates what it means to be a congregational rabbi and to serve the people that you care about the most. And I can say that he is the reason that I love the profession that I'm in. And what he does is I use him as my example for how I should be. So hearing a memory of him is very, very great and uplifting for me. And I appreciate that. And so, you know, we are in those unprecedented times of living in a global pandemic, right? The world has not seen this since the Spanish flu. So that's quite a while. And thinking about all of that. And there are some things that we all anticipated sort of missing out on, right? Traveling to California to see family for both you and me, being able to dive in the same physical space with more than 35 people, right? Those are some of the things we anticipated missing. But is there anything that you didn't think you were going to miss that you miss, right? So for me, my example is I never thought I was going to be so interested in people's facial expressions, including their mouth, right? Like I never thought in a million years that I was going to be like, it's weird not to see a person's mouth. And are they smiling? Are they frowning or not? So I'm curious what your shocking thing is that you are missing during this time.
I just want to mention something about your father, Micah. As people know, and they don't, if they don't know, all they have to do is listen to me for about 3 seconds. That's all it takes. They kind of say, "You're from the East." Wait a minute, you're from New York. Wait a minute, you sound like you're from Brooklyn. So it takes a very short time. We have a particular accent, and which is actually in Congress right now because Bernie Sanders and Chuck Schumer went to the same high school I did, and Chuck Schumer was my classmate. Uh, Same class, I mean, literally my classmate. Um, it's the fact that, and we have a particular way of speaking English. It's the fact that your father had a particular way of speaking English, which was so refreshing. A South African accent, which is probably the way English should be spoken. That and that from Great Britain. And the fact he speaks the way he does is actually refreshing. And this is the way the English language was meant to be spoken before New Yorkers and Brooklynites in particular corrupted it. So I always thought that.
I get that. Listen, Larry, I appreciate you sharing that. When my father speaks, right? So being raised in Durban, South Africa, you get a different pronunciation. Neither and neither, right? Little things like that. And so I am a neither camp person, which is 100% my father's influence. Either, neither, neither, all of those. And I also learned from my father that I cut when I use my knife, right? There's a certain way that you do it when you're in Britain. Do you use your dominant hand always and switch over? And watching him and doing this and seeing how we even cut food is something that is particular to his upbringing. But yeah, neither shall we know war anymore. Right? That's my most famous one that I always quote from him. And I also love the Old English, my cuppeth overflow, right? Like all of those things are for sure his influence. And so I really appreciate you mentioning that because that's some of the nuance that I love from my upbringing. So thank you.
In terms of what I miss as a result of the COVID situation, is the seeing of people in person. With all due regard to Skype, which I know is archaic now, or Teams, which is a new thing, and Zoom, which will always be there, I have a feeling, unless we will enhance it somehow. Despite all that, it's that physical presence of people that I miss. Let's talk daily minion here. Let's talk at the evening service. When a person came for a yahrzeit, to observe a yahrzeit for a loved one, inevitably that individual came up to me and gave me a hug. Obviously, you can't do that now. Actually, gave me a hug. Thank you for mentioning my loved one's name. And then he or she may have related a tale of something about from his or her loved one's life. I still remember the person would say to me when my did this or when I did that, and she either held out his or her hand or maybe gave me a hug if they knew me better than just casually, and that I miss. I miss that physical contact. That's not being weird, but I mean that physical contact for somebody to say thank you for mentioning so and so's name, and I really appreciate that, etc. And that's not happening. We can't. It's obviously it's not happening. You miss the smile, which is covered up by a mask. I miss that personal contact, which literally is a handshake or a hug, or as you would say, a smile. I think as I mentioned the person's name, in many ways, I see a tear coming down the person's face, or maybe even a smile, maybe even a laugh about remembering something funny that the person said or did, or which is important to remember. And I missed that. That is something which I really, really miss. And I mean, it just doesn't come across in Zoom. It just doesn't. I mean, in many ways, it's like an email. I mean, you can read the text. You can read the text, but that's so devoid of any emotion. You don't know how to take that text. Is the person angry? Is the person sad? Is the person happy? Or whatever. I mean, that's part of communication. And we are losing, and we can't do that in COVID. The physical contact, or the really hearty handshake, or the, the sincere hug, that's not happening here. And I really miss that. That's not happening. And I wonder if we'll get back to that when we finally get the vaccination of all people. And COVID is something we put into the history books. I just wonder if we'll get back to that. I really hope we do.
Yeah. No, I think that is the biggest piece, right? Like way back when, now in March of last year, crazy to think that we are now just about 11 months removed from all of this, is the first thing I thought about as a rabbi was, what does the Torah processional look like in the future? Right? Like where you walk around the community and you shake hands, you give hugs to people who you know are in the midst of their your side acknowledgments, or they're in the middle of Shiva or Shloshim or any of those things, that you were able to check in for 10 to 12 seconds while you were walking around the sanctuary, right? And a handshake, a hug, I'm here for you means so much. And, I know for us at Temple of Aaron on high holidays, we still did the old receiving line, right? Of shaking your hand and talking to you as you were leaving the building after our most meaningful time of year. And those are the things that are like really tough, is that, yeah, I don't know if there will be a Torah processional in the next year. We've gone a year without it. Are we going to go another? And what does that mean? And how do we miss? And it's not about yes, it's fantastic to walk with all the children and seeing all of them with their Torahs and
Right.
doing that walk. But the minute to check on, as you alluded to, the person in mourning, the person who just went through a surgery, the person who celebrated a birthday, even doesn't have to be sad or somewhat scary. It can be any of those things, that you had that moment to connect, that I don't know what that looks like in 2021 or 2022 anymore. And it used to be such a small moment that meant so much, that we were able to do a quick check-in that we're missing now.
I remember this was Rabbi Fine. I had suffered a heart attack. It was bound to happen. I have a family history of that, and apparently it was in a very dangerous place where the blockage was. But we got to it in time, and there's a stent or whatever else. And Rabbi Fine was here and came by, visited. Okay, I appreciate it. Now, in terms of Linda coming surgery, you don't make those house calls anymore. I mean, you make phone calls, but not house calls. And you don't make hospital visits anymore because of COVID and the hospital regulations. And that is missed. That is totally missed. I mean, even this, if it's a non-serious thing, the fact that you came over, the fact you would come over and see how things are doing, I mean, that's, and you acknowledge the fact that somebody had some serious surgery and has recovered, Baruch Hashem, and that's very much missed as well, and I just hope that returns. I mean, I think the role of a rabbi, or even a congregant, let's just say a congregant, of which a rabbi I think is head congregant, but a congregant nonetheless, is be able to offer comfort to fellow congregants who need it. Whatever that is, whatever it's appreciated. But you basically with the COVID, you're being operated with both hands tied behind your back. And the hands are gloved, by the way. But both hands,
Yes.
yeah, both hands is tied behind your back, and that makes life much more difficult than it has been in the past.
It does.
And
It most certainly does.
and I know I think about the 429,000 people who have lost their lives to this pandemic, and I think of them and how I don't know what we could have done any differently, but I think of them often too. I mean, they suffered. The 429. It's not like somebody who's 95 who dies in their sleep. I mean, sometimes that's a Baruch Hashem kind of thing. Somebody, these people didn't do that. These people couldn't breathe. These people were suffocating, and I really feel a certain sense of tragedy about these people, and that's. I mean, I miss them. Some of them I knew. Some of them I knew. I mean, how could you not know? You would know for at least some of the 429,000. And I'm not getting into politics here, so there's
No.
politics with anything.
Right.
But
Of course.
I mean, but there was, these people were lost, and that's something we'll miss as well. These people were fathers, mothers, daughters, sons, uncles, aunts, cousins, friends, teachers, and that's something we'll miss as well. And so,
Yeah, no, it is so tough. It is so difficult. The thing that, it's so difficult for us to really fathom the repercussions of everything that is happening in our world, and tough for us to think about. And, whenever we talk about, unfortunately, the loss of a life, is often we think about the potential that was cut short. And that is 100%, I think, where we sit as a world and as a country and as individuals, of thinking about the shortness in which some lives were cut and trying to fathom that. Yet we still are in the world of trying to think about what can be and what can we provide. And, I hope that we are able to learn lessons from a class that we wish never would have happened. We wish that COVID-19 was a course that none of us had to take a lesson in. Yet, unfortunately, that was the truth. And we have to. And now, may we learn from it. And whatever that means, there can be so many different levels of what that means, that I hope we can. And so, Larry, I appreciate you.
oh, can I just summarize? Just want to summarize this.
Yes, please summarize your thoughts.
I would appreciate it in these some 40 some years. I can't do the arithmetic right now. But the opportunity, the really much appreciated opportunity and honor and privilege to getting to know a lot of the Temple of Aaron family, be it clergy, be it administrative staff, be it custodial staff, or anyone connected with the Temple of Aaron. I appreciate the opportunity to get to know these people and to really become linked with them. And that's been a truly privilege on my part, having had the opportunity to really get to know and become involved with them. And with you, especially Micah, having a association with your mishpacha, be it your parents or your siblings, that I really appreciate, and your wife and your kid. I really appreciate the opportunity to do that throughout my years here at the TFA.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you so much for that. And I don't think there's a better place for us to end than on those comments and those notes. I thank you as well. It has been special to be able to work with you. You will forever have a deep impact on my reality of being a rabbi and being an educator and all this because of you and because of Gabby. It's so amazing that you worked with my father and I worked with your daughter, and we were all in different places. And it has been a great honor to be working with you.
And the honor's been mine.
Oh, thank you so much. And I am so happy that we were finally able to get a member spotlight with both of us on this. And Larry, thank you so much for absolutely everything. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for this one.
Thank you.